All right, so this is basically going to be me reading some Reddit stories while playing this weirdly satisfying pressure watching game in the background. I've got a few stories lined up, and honestly, I haven't read all of these before, so I'm going to be reacting to them as I go. We've got some petty revenge, some family drama, some questionable decisions, and at least one story that gets a little more serious. So if you're just looking for something to have on in the background while you do something else, grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's get into it. All right, the first story was posted by you/frustrating bacon eater on r/am I the asshole. And the title is, Will I be the asshole for refusing to stop cooking bacon in my kitchen due to my teenage daughter's vegan lifestyle? So, I'm a dad and I've always been pretty close with my daughter. My family has always eaten meat and we live in the rural Midwest, so bacon for breakfast has basically always been a normal thing in our house. But this year, my 14-year-old daughter decided to go vegan. And honestly, I had no problem with that. I actually tried pretty hard to support her. We started figuring out vegan substitutes, trying different recipes, and buying some of the more expensive vegan products she wanted. I basically did everything I could to make the change easier for her. The problem started with one pan. One morning, I cooked some bacon in a pan we'd always used as a family. Afterwards, I rinsed it and put it into the dishwasher. Apparently, that was a huge mistake. My daughter got really upset and told me that the pan was supposed to be hers for vegan food. And I was honestly confused because it's a family pan. It's been in our kitchen forever. Still, I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable about her food, so I bought her separate set of pans. I even picked different colors so everyone would know which ones were hers. I thought that would solve the problem. It didn't. Now she was worried that the dishwasher itself was contaminated from washing meat-related cookware. Then she started getting uncomfortable about the refrigerator because I eat bacon and according to her, there could be traces of grease on the fridge handle. And eventually she asked my wife and me to stop eating meat completely inside our own house. That's where I put my foot down. My wife actually thinks we should consider it. Her argument is that both sets of grandparents live nearby, so we could just eat meat at their houses if we wanted it. But I don't really agree. My daughter is completely free to eat whatever she wants. I've already bought her separate cookware and changed how we shop and cook to accommodate her. But I'm not going to stop eating bacon in my own kitchen. I understand that she doesn't want meat around her food, but at some point, isn't she also going to have to learn how to live around people who make different choices? So, am I actually the asshole here? I mean, personally, I don't think so. Like, separate pans? Sure, that's easy enough. But banning an entire food category from the house because one person doesn't want to be around it feels like a pretty big jump. And apparently, Reddit mostly agreed with him too. The post was ultimately judged not the asshole. Alright, that one was pretty tame. The next one is not. This story was posted by you/Hikari Nocturne on r/entitled parents, and the title is Entitled Mother Lets Her Kids Steal My Blind Cane. So, I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I'd only been completely blind for about a year when this happened. I'd actually started losing my sight because of an infection I'd picked up years earlier, and over time it affected my eyes until I eventually lost my vision completely. The transition was rough. At first, I barely wanted to leave my house because I didn't really know how to navigate the outside world anymore. I didn't have much support, and I was still figuring out how to do basic things independently. Then one day, my husband asked me to take an Uber to the bank to deposit a rent check. I really didn't want to go by myself, but eventually I agreed. While I was out, he reminded me that we were also low on some groceries. So luckily, there was a Walmart basically right across from the bank. So I figured, eventually, I'm going to have to learn how to do this alone anyway. Why not now? I went inside with my cane and started shopping. I was still getting used to navigating with it, so obviously I bumped into things occasionally. At one point, my cane hit something. I thought I'd accidentally bumped into someone's legs, so I immediately apologized. That's when a woman started yelling at me. She told me I'd hit her son. I apologized again and explained that I hadn't seen him because I was blind. And then she asked me something that honestly caught me completely off guard. She asked me why I wasn't wearing those big sunglasses that blind people are supposed to wear. I tried explaining that I didn't need sunglasses inside and that a decent pair could be pretty expensive. She basically didn't believe me. She accused me of pretending to be blind. And I was already getting angry because I don't know what she thought I was getting out of pretending to be blind. But before I could even respond, I felt someone pull my cane out of my hand. It was her kid. He'd just taken it. And then the mother actually let him keep it. I started panicking and told him I needed it back. Without my cane, I could barely move around without running into things. And her response was, she told me I was lying about being blind and that her son deserved to play with the cane more than I did. At that point, they started walking away. I could hear my cane hitting things as they went. I was completely stuck. I couldn't see where they were. I didn't know where anything was, and without the cane, I could barely move around without running into things. I ended up panicking, trying to find something to hold on to, and eventually crashed into a display. I fell down and started crying. And I was just sitting there, completely overwhelmed, in the middle of a store, wondering what I was supposed to do. Then someone put a hand on my shoulder. A man asked me if I was okay and told me to stay where I was. I heard him walk away. And then somewhere a little distance away, I heard this massive argument. There was yelling, then a really loud crash, and a few seconds later, the guy came back. He helped me up, put my cane back into my hand, and helped me gather the stuff I'd knocked over. I was crying and thanking him because honestly, I had no idea how I would have gotten out of that situation. He basically told me not to worry about it and helped me finish shopping. Then he helped me out of the store. I could still hear the woman yelling behind us, apparently claiming that he'd somehow attacked her or her kid when he'd taken the cane back. I don't even know what actually happened during that part. I just know that I got my cane back. And after everything that happened, that guy genuinely restored some of my faith in people. Because being newly blind already made me feel like the world was a pretty scary place. Having someone take away the one thing helping me navigate the world was terrifying. But having a complete stranger step in when I couldn't even help myself, yeah, that meant a lot. And honestly, that story went from annoying entitled parent to what the actual hell really fast. The mother didn't just let her kid take someone's property, she let him take something that person literally depended on to move around safely. And then there was a random guy who basically said, "Nope, give that back," and stepped in. That's the kind of stranger you remember forever. Alright, moving on. This next one was posted by you/only in Quebec 9 on r/am I the asshole, and the title is, "Am I the asshole for telling my wife the lock on my daughter's door does not get removed until my brother-in-law and his teenage daughters are out of our house?" So, my brother-in-law lost his home after his divorce. My wife and I agreed to let him move in with us, and he brought his twin teenage daughters with him. We already had a 16-year-old daughter of our own. My daughter and her cousins weren't particularly close, but they got along well enough. The problem was that the cousins apparently didn't understand the concept of privacy. They'd walk into my daughter's room whenever they wanted and take whatever they felt like borrowing. Makeup, phone accessories, clothes, even her school laptop. My daughter complained about it several times, and I'd already told the girls to stop. But my wife and my brother-in-law didn't really think it was that serious. Their argument was basically that they're teenage girls and they borrow each other's stuff. I disagreed. There's a difference between borrowing something and taking it without asking. Then, one day, my daughter spent over a month saving up for an expensive makeup kit. One of her cousins took it without asking and messed around with it until she basically ruined it. My daughter was devastated, and that's when I found out she'd started moving some of her more valuable belongings out of the house because she didn't trust her cousins around them. That was enough for me. I bought her a lock for her bedroom door. Obviously, my brother-in-law and his daughters weren't happy about it. He told me his daughters weren't thieves and that girls their age naturally share things. He even said my daughter could just replace the makeup with a cheaper kit. And honestly, that part annoyed me even more. It's not about whether the makeup costs $60 or $15. It's about the fact that it wasn't theirs. My wife was also upset about the lock. She thought I was being overprotective and that the lock would stop her nieces from spending time with our daughter. She told me to take it off. I told her no. In fact, I told her the lock stays until my brother-in-law and his daughters move out. That obviously turned into another argument because my wife thought I was basically telling her family to leave. And I reminded her that I was the one who agreed to let them move in when nobody else in her family wanted to take them. Now everybody's upset with me and my daughter, and we're basically getting the silent treatment. But I still don't think I did anything wrong. My daughter shouldn't have to hide her own belongings because she's afraid the people living in her house are going to take them. And if someone wants to borrow something, it's really not that hard to ask first. I don't know, man. If you're a guest in somebody else's house and you've been repeatedly told not to take their kids' stuff, I feel like the lock isn't exactly the crazy part. The crazy part is that it got to the point where the kid needed one. Reddit agreed with the dad here too, with the post receiving a not the asshole judgment. Alright, this next one is much shorter, but I actually think it's pretty interesting. It was posted by you/yes-so-that on r/am I the asshole. And the title is, Am I the asshole for announcing that my dad's not paying my college tuition? So my aunt and uncle were paying for my cousin's college. My dad had also set aside money for my college, but there were a lot of conditions attached to it. I had to maintain at least a B average, he wanted to approve my classes beforehand, we'd have weekly meetings about my grades, and normally I guess that wouldn't necessarily be unreasonable, but my relationship with my dad isn't exactly normal. He's got a pretty bad temper, and throughout high school, I spent years stressing about my grades because I knew a bad grade could lead to me getting yelled at or punished. Sometimes it wasn't even my fault. There were situations where a teacher hadn't updated an online grade properly, and I still ended up getting blamed. He'd also randomly search my backpack and locker because he wanted to make sure I wasn't hiding anything. So when college started, I made a decision. I decided I'd rather pay for school myself, I'd rather deal with the financial pressure than spend 4 more years worrying that my dad might decide I wasn't meeting his standards and pull the money. I'd already finished my first year when my family got together for a holiday. Everyone was talking about my cousin's college. Then my uncle looked at my dad and asked how much my school was costing him. And I basically said, "Why are you asking him? I'm paying for it." That's literally what happened. I wasn't trying to embarrass my dad, I was just answering the question. But later, my dad got angry and told me I'd made him look bad. And that's where I'm wondering if I was actually wrong. I could have answered more politely. I could have just given my uncle the tuition amount and moved on. But he asked my dad how much my school cost. The answer was that my dad wasn't paying for it. So, was I supposed to lie? Honestly, I don't think so. If somebody asks you a question and the truthful answer happens to make someone else look bad, that's not necessarily your fault. And I think the fact that I was willing to pay for college myself because I didn't want my dad controlling my education says more about the situation than that one comment does. Reddit's verdict here was not the asshole as well. Okay, thanks for everyone who's still watching and supporting me, and I hope you enjoyed these last 2 stories as well. The next one is a bit longer, but I think you'd enjoy its ending even more. The OP had actually deleted their account, but it was on r/responsible revenge. And the title is, She Turned Our Lives into a Reality Show of Lies. I wrote the season finale. So my wife was obsessed with Instagram. Pretty much everything about our lives ended up online. Our apartment, our food, our dog, everything. From the outside, we looked like we had this perfect little life. I was basically the camera-shy husband in the background of all of it. And for a while, I didn't really care. I loved my wife, or at least I thought I knew the person I was married to. Then things started getting weird. She was staying up late supposedly editing. She'd take phone calls in private. And suddenly she had a bunch of expensive clothes that she claimed were gifts from brands. At first, I didn't think too much about it. Then I found something in our shared cloud storage. She'd apparently forgotten to log out of another account. And what I found there changed everything. She wasn't just cheating on me with her personal trainer, Alex. There were messages suggesting that they were planning a whole future together. There were transfers from our joint accounts into accounts that were only in her name. And there were even plans for a trip for her and Alex after she apparently planned to tell me some big news. My first instinct was to confront her. But then I thought about how much she loved drama. If I started screaming at her, she'd probably turn the whole thing into another story about how she'd survived some horrible marriage. So I decided not to say anything. Instead, I started collecting evidence. I saved messages, I gathered financial records, I even hired a private investigator to get photographs of her and Alex together. And all the while, I acted completely normal. I was still the supportive husband, I still played along with everything. Meanwhile, she was planning this huge sponsored event at a trendy venue. She'd apparently reached some kind of major milestone and had a special announcement planned. And that's where I decided to do something. Because if she wanted her entire life to be a show, I figured I'd let her audience see the part she hadn't planned. At the event, she got on stage and started talking about how amazing her life was. She even thanked her incredible and supportive husband. And then she got ready to make her big announcement. That's when the screen behind her changed. Instead of the photos she'd prepared, the audience started seeing the evidence I'd collected. Messages between her and Alex, photos, financial records, the money she'd been moving, and then the final slide appeared. It basically said that her next chapter was going to be with Alex, that I'd financed the relationship long enough, and that divorce papers were coming. The entire room apparently went silent. Then people started whispering. Phones came out. Her sponsors were shocked, and my wife went from confused to furious to completely horrified. I didn't stay to watch everything fall apart. I left. After that, things got ugly. Her sponsors dropped her online career basically collapsed, and apparently Alex wasn't nearly as interested in their future once the money disappeared. I was able to recover a good portion of what I'd lost financially, but honestly, that wasn't really what mattered to me. I wasn't trying to get revenge for the money. I wanted to take back control of the story she'd been telling about our life. And now, finally, my life actually feels like mine. Even our dog seems happier. No more staged photos, no more pretending everything is perfect. Just normal life. Okay, I can't lie. That is an absolutely insane way to handle a cheating spouse. Would I personally recommend turning someone's sponsored event into a live public reveal? Probably not. But I can understand why, after spending weeks quietly collecting evidence while someone was planning to completely rewrite your life, you might want them to experience one very public reality check. And that title really was accurate. He basically waited until the season finale. All right, we have come all the way down to the last one in today's list. This one starts off as an airport argument, but there's actually an update that makes the whole situation a lot more serious. The original story was posted by _Rhode Island 123 on r/am I the asshole, and the title is, "Am I the asshole for walking out of the airport when I saw my husband's mom standing there with her luggage?" So, I don't have a great relationship with my husband's mom. She's made comments about me since the beginning of our relationship, and there have been a bunch of weird situations over the years. At one point, I dyed my hair purple. Then she did the exact same thing. When people pointed it out, she somehow blamed me for making her look ridiculous. So yeah, our relationship wasn't exactly amazing. Then, my husband and I planned a 2-week trip overseas. I was the one who saved up the money and organized the trip, while my husband handled the actual flight bookings. His mom wanted to come. I said no. That turned into a whole thing. She called me, she texted me, she got other people involved to try to convince me. At one point, she even threatened to make a police complaint if we didn't let her come. My husband told me we should just take her. I told him absolutely not. Then he said if his mom couldn't come, he wouldn't go either. So I basically called his bluff. Eventually, he backed down and told me he'd make sure his mom understood that she wasn't coming. After that, things got suspiciously quiet. The day of the trip finally arrived. We got to the airport around 2 in the afternoon. My husband was walking ahead of me and he kept looking around like he was searching for someone. I asked him what he was doing. He didn't answer. Then we reached the waiting area, and I saw her, his mom, standing there with her luggage. I just froze. My husband was hugging her like everything was completely normal, and I turned around and started walking towards the exit. He followed me, yelling to stop. He told me I was overreacting. He said his mom was already there, so I should just let it go and enjoy the trip. But the entire reason she was there was because he had secretly booked her a ticket. He knew I'd said no. He knew we'd argued about it, and he'd waited until we were literally at the airport to tell me. So I told him he could go with his mom. I was going home. I went home and basically cried into my dog's fur for a while. Then my husband came back later, furious. He told me I was being spiteful and that I'd ruined the entire trip. He even called my family and told them the trip was canceled because of me. And my family told me I should have just sucked it up and tried to enjoy myself. But I keep thinking, was I actually wrong for leaving? Because from my perspective, he made a decision behind my back after we'd already agreed on what was happening, and then he expected me to pretend it wasn't a big deal. Personally, I don't think I'd be getting on that plane either. I know that it's his mom, but as a husband, he should respect his wife's opinion, right? He could have arranged something of his own with his mom if he really needed that. Yeah, I don't think I'd be in the mood for a 2-week vacation either. But apparently, that's not where this story ended, because OP posted an update afterward, and we can finally get to know what she did and how it went. Moving on to the update. After everything that happened, I realized that the airport situation wasn't really an isolated incident. My husband's relationship with his mother had been affecting our marriage for a long time. She had always favored him compared with his siblings, and he was extremely close to her. Even his own siblings have warned me about this particular thing. He'd talk to her or see her basically every day, and whenever there was an issue involving her, I was usually the one expected to compromise. For a long time, I made excuses for him. I loved them, and I genuinely wanted our marriage to work. But after the airport incident, something changed. We tried talking about everything, but the conversation mostly turned into another argument where I ended up being the blame. Eventually, I told him that I needed some space, and that I was going to stay with my sister. His response was basically to open the door and tell me to leave. And honestly, that was the moment something clicked for me. I started thinking about what the next few years of my life would look like if nothing changed. I'd still be having the same arguments. His mother would still be defended. And every time I objected to something, I'd probably still end up being called jealous, aggressive, crazy, or an overreactor. I was exhausted, so I came to stay with my sister. I took my dog with me, and I started seriously considering separation and divorce. My husband told me that I was the one choosing to end our marriage, but I don't really see it that way. I feel like his refusal to acknowledge what had been happening is what finally pushed me to this point. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, but for the first time in a long time, I'm seriously considering whether staying in this marriage is actually what's best for me. And honestly, after reading that update, I understand why the airport incident hit her so hard. It wasn't really about one extra passenger. It was about realizing that she said no. They agreed on it, and her husband still went behind her back and did exactly what he'd promised not to do. Then, when she reacted, she made her the problem. And once he realized something like that is part of a much bigger pattern, it's pretty hard to just pretend everything is fine. So no, I don't think she was wrong for leaving the airport. And after the update, I can understand why she started seriously considering separation too. Sometimes the argument that finally pushes someone over the edge isn't actually the biggest problem in the relationship. It's just the moment that makes them realize the bigger problem isn't going away. And yeah, that's a pretty rough place to end up. So that's going to do it for the first video. If you stayed with me for all this long, wait another 20 seconds and look at the final time lapse from the game to see the satisfying ending, which took more than 50 minutes for me to record. I have sped up the process for you a tiny bit. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and comment your thoughts on the stories, and share your own if you have anything interested. Who knows, next time your story might be in one of the stories. Alright then. Thanks for watching. See y'all soon in another video with a list of more interesting stories.